All right, 1 year on end of the month, November reflection. This one is a heavy one, I think. It's a ritual that I do every month, and I look at all the stuff that happened on different angles. And needless to say, it was a strange month. It was constant confusion and skepticism. Should I do this? Should I try that? And it felt like a broken record. It happened a lot. The energy alignment, which I check every week, was between the 2 and the 3. And I feel it comes from the lack of this month. There was not much pumped and excitement and gung-ho, but it was a lot of felt so heavy. And maybe it was not the idea that I'm trying to build as a business, but more where I am, or the things that maybe I need to deal with kind of myself. The major stressors that I identified is obviously BlueMelon. There's a lot of disruption in this industry. I'm not in it, but I'm in it because I'm always checking and making sure that some of these things are okay, but it's so obviously that adds a stress to the thing. When you're doing your own idea, you do have financial pressure. Despite of having some run rate, you start to go, okay, well, at what point you're going to start to have some revenue coming in? So that pressure obviously started to become really real in November, which is not great because it's December's around the corner. Well, we're in December, and then Christmas, and then it's not the best. You can't pretty much launch anything right now. And then, thanks to Jack's kind of pushing hard, and from the sessions that I had at the International Men's Day, and it's time for me to go and go to Colombia and go back to my roots and reconnect. But I'm doing that by myself. So there's these kind of mixed feelings of that's great that I go and reconnect, but it's really difficult to leave Jack's and the girls here. So huge bittersweet. And as I've documented lately, that persistent kind of doubt on commitment with Interluda as an idea, or any idea in itself. So then what happens in Interluda? Validation work. A lot of work went in there. So we did 4 or 5 meetups. We got people coming in, sharing a lot of things. But what it did happen is, even though the community seems to be growing, it's like 91, 93 people now, there is an interesting mention, the people want community, but nobody really wants to commit to building the community. And that's kind of an irony. It's how it works. I think everyone's too busy. We like the idea, but we don't like to think about what it takes maybe to build that community. So then I landed on, after the month, maybe it's the audience that it's happening in Meetup. It's beautiful, but it's also not the right one for Interluda, as some participants were in extreme situations, which I'm not a coach, I'm not a psychologist, and I can't support them. Some of them could face homelessness. Some of them were in a lot of financial stress. And then I thought, okay, that's beyond Interluda's space. And then I started to think, is Meetup the right platform versus Eventbrite and Humanities? But then that would mean go and test all these other platforms. I did also work on research synthesis. So I built myself a system and a framework that I could synthesize the research and convert it into potential Interluda ideas, and which personas were appearing through the research. And some of the themes that consistently kept emerging was AI companion, peer accountability, and some financial, more like support, but in the way of, is there any frameworks or things for people could use just to get a better understanding or their position financially without having to go to a financial advisor. That also kept coming. The other thing is, I worked a lot on a strategic work, and that has two folds. Was I avoiding making the real decision of commitment on building this idea, or what is stuff that I needed to do? My therapy, revelation, insights, which the other thing I was working on more personal level is like with a psychologist, which is useful to have. It was realizing the values versus goals confusion, which it comes down to, I was treating my values, I think, as goals attached to the success of a business that doesn't exist. So my values under the filter of Interluda. So if Interluda was not living those values or hitting those values, then I would feel like I'm not living my values. So that was interesting. So as if the business didn't hit any outcomes, then you feel like you don't have values, which is it's silly because then everything collapses, and that's like the last thing you want, right? So I need to live my values around collaboration, around connection, belonging, and all those things, which is difficult when you're a solopreneur. So the patterns were, is building this community almost like seeking permission to build Interluda? I don't know. Is that a thing? Or I need an internal belief that I want to do this thing. Otherwise, there's not enough research or strategy that will cover that. And that's super interesting to realize after all this time. And I don't know how do you break that. Which means I haven't done the reinvention work myself. And the irony is that I'm trying to build something to help people reinvent themselves, which kind of sucks because I have to go and then go, all right, Juan, you need to reinvent yourself, and then either make a decision you want to do these or not. Don't get tangled on building these as you rediscover yourself, because that's not going to work. There were a few patterns that came along the way and visited me through the month. One is isolation. Working in isolation can be quite heavy. So it not only contradicts my values, but it also, all the community experiments didn't work, and then you start to realize you have a narrow network that then you don't have much peer support. And when you don't have those things, then you just spend a lot of time in your head. The other one that came a lot is the doing versus being. And I think that I'm constantly in being. I've been a workaholic, I think, all my life. So I work, doing not so much of being. But then there's this sense, and I don't know if that happens to you, but sometimes this idea of the activities that you're doing that are not making you money sometimes make me feel that I'm wasting time. It's almost like your time is not wasted if you're making money, which I know is wrong, but it's kind of like this thinking, and it's not just about money, but then you do sit there going, okay, how much doing or being can I afford myself doing before I make money? And where I landed with my therapies was, well, there's no shortcut. You can't rush this thing, so maybe you just need to stop doing stuff and start on being. And I think the Colombia trip will help with that, just hang out with my family a little bit. And the other pattern was confidence and commitment issues. And it's all about this constant thing in your head, am I really committed to Interluda? And I wonder if this happens also to other people that are trying to build that thing. When I was building BlueMelon, for example, I just went and did it. There was no... But now that I've had so many battle wounds and so many lessons of things that didn't work, it's like so much difficult to start again. So there's a lot of self-doubt that comes, and then you add a layer of strategic thinking just to maybe to avoid that self-doubt. And there's this desire of making sure that what you put out there gives you the outcomes that you want, but you keep reminded that you don't control what happens in market. You can do activities, you can try things, but once it's out there in the world, you don't really control all like the outcomes. And I've heard this on some of the content that Rick Rubin's put out there, which is fantastic. Around when you create something, you have this moment of creating your creation time, when it's just you within yourself and trying to build this thing. But once you put something out in the world, it's out of your control. I did explore as well going to Stone and Chalk, which is like an accelerator. I got rejected, bam, because you need to have an MVP, you need to have tech IP, and you need to have at least 1 or 2 clients paid. I mean, if I was at that level, I'm sure I wouldn't be going to Stone and Chalk, right? Like I've already have an MVP market fit. I will go straight to find investors if it's needed. And then the key decisions I need to make. So one is I need to figure out how Juan is going to reinvent himself in terms of how am I living my life and the life I want to do outside Interluda's context or any business idea. I'm going to have a brutal commitment check, which is a moment in time not far from now where I need to make a decision whether I want to build a business, get myself employed, or explore something else. What a pain. And it's like stuck in the same thing as I was sick 5 months ago, really. Like, it's just nuts when you think about it. If it's Interluda, then I need to look at the financial model to get the break even and the revenue, then resume the things that I had planned, which is the landing page test, the workshop test, the retreat test. Colombia trip is thumbs up, and how to build a bit of an MVP that I call Luda. As I continue on my monthly reflection, holy moly, there are some contradictions and tensions that I found, and things like I found I don't want to do this solo, but at the same time, I'm finding the reality is I'm not finding people to collaborate with. The values, connection with, I like connection and community and belonging, and then I still work in isolation, and content is silent. So there's no engagement, there's no things, and that starts to create a bit of a tension there. Then I believe there's something about reinvention. I do believe there's something that could help people. But my brain keeps telling you, when are you wasting your time? And I've got this desire to build Interluda because it kind of makes sense. But the reality is that I don't have that fire or internal commitment. Ooh, not cool, man, not cool. So it's a month of, I don't know, how would you even call this? I don't feel like there's been much progress. I mean, there's stuff done, but maybe it was not the right stuff. Wow, a bit uncomfortable, but it's what it is. I'm trying to do these kind of documentation so I can go back in time and reflect on all these moments. So if anyone out there is watching quietly, I hope I didn't bore you with a 15-minute video, but thank you for listening. And if you're out there and you want to connect, just send me a message.